story is called Corduroy. Once there was a little brown bear in green corduroy overalls. His name was Corduroy. Now he lived in the toy department of a big department store. Every day, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, they came and went through the toy department. And they bought dolls and puzzles and games and other stuffed animals, but no one seemed to want a small brown bear in green corduroy overalls. And then one day, Corduroy looked down from his shelf, and there, standing in front of him, was a little girl with big brown eyes and soft chocolate skin. And she looked up at Corduroy and she said, "Oh, Mama, look at this little bear. He is just the bear I've always wanted." Well, the little girl's mother came up behind her and put her hands on the little girl's shoulders. And she looked up at Corduroy too. She said, "Oh, Lisa, he is cute. But you know, I can't afford to buy him for you today. I've already spent too much money. And look, he's not quite new. He's missing a button on his overalls." Sadly, Lisa and her mother left the toy department, and Corduroy looked down at his shoulder. He said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was missing a button. I'm gonna have to look for it." And that's exactly what he did. That night, after all of the customers had gone home and the salespeople had turned off the lights and gone home too, Corduroy climbed down from his shelf and he began looking all around for his lost button. First, he looked on the floor right in front of his shelf, but he didn't find it. So he kept walking and looking and walking and looking, and before he knew it, he had walked right out of the toy department and into the great big aisle of the main part of the store. Well, he kept walking and looking, and then suddenly he began to go up and up, higher and higher. "Oh my gosh," said Corduroy, "I must be on a mountain. I've always wanted to climb a mountain." Now, Corduroy was not on a mountain. He was on a moving stairway called an escalator. And he rode that escalator to the top, where he found something else amazing. There was furniture everywhere, so much furniture, so many different kinds. There were bookcases and dining room tables and chairs and comfy couches and big cozy armchairs to curl up in, and row after row of beds. "My goodness," said Corduroy, "look at all this furniture. This must be a castle. Where else could you find so much furniture?" "Well, I've always wanted to visit a castle." Now, Corduroy was not in a castle. He was in the furniture department of that big department store. Well, Corduroy remembered that he was looking for his lost button, so he began to look over and in and under the furniture. He looked under the tables and chairs. He looked under the couches and armchairs. He looked on top of the tables. And then he came to that row of beds. And he thought, maybe I better climb up there. Maybe my button is on top of that bed. So he climbed up onto the first bed in the row. And there, right in front of him, lying on the mattress, what do you think? There was his lost button. "Here it is," he said, and he bent down and he grabbed that button with both of his furry little paws. And he went to pick it up, but it was stuck. It wouldn't come up. So he grabbed that button and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled until pop, woo, flip, crash. The button came off in his paws. He did a double backflip off the bed and knocked over a tall standing lamp. Well, the noise scared him and he went to hide. Well, Corduroy didn't know that he was not alone in that great big store. Down below on the first floor, the night watchman was going his rounds, flashing his flashlight about. Now, when he heard that big crash upstairs, he thought, my gosh, somebody is in the store who shouldn't be. I've got to go find out. So the night watchman rode the escalator up to the second floor, and he began to flash his flashlight over and under the furniture, looking for what might have caused the noise. Well, he began to flash his flashlight over the beds, and at the end of one of the beds, he saw something very strange. Sticking out from under the blanket were two furry little brown ears. Well, the night watchman went over and he pulled the covers back, and there was Corduroy. What are you doing up here, young man? You're supposed to be downstairs in the toy department. You come with me. So the night watchman tucked Corduroy under his arm and rode back down the escalator to the toy department, where he put Corduroy back on his shelf. Well, the next day, when the salespeople came in to work, they turned on the lights, and soon the customers began to arrive. And when Corduroy looked down from his shelf, there, standing in front of him, was the very same little girl who had come to visit him the day before. Only today, she had a big smile on her face. She took Corduroy down from the shelf and she said, "Yesterday, I went home and I counted the money in my piggy bank. And my mama says I have enough money to buy you." So she took Corduroy to the counter where the sales lady was standing behind the cash register. She set Corduroy on the counter and she took out her change purse and she dumped all the money out on the counter. She said, "I'd like to buy this little bear." "Of course, my dear, I'll be glad to sell him to you." Well, the sales lady counted the money and put it in the cash register, and then she said, "Now, my dear, would you like me to put this little bear in a bag or a box?" "Oh no," said Lisa, "I'll hold him." And that's what she did. All the way out of the store, all the way home in the car, she held Corduroy tight. And when they got home, she undid her seatbelt and she and Corduroy hurried out of the car and into the house and up the stairs to her room. And when they got there, she stood in the doorway and she held Corduroy out so that he could see where he was going to be living. He saw a girl-sized desk and a girl-sized chair and a girl-sized bed, and next to the girl-sized bed, there was a wee little bed, just the right size for Corduroy. Now, Lisa took Corduroy over to her desk, and she picked up a little basket, and then she came back to her bed and sat down with Corduroy on her lap and the basket on her knees. She opened the basket, and she began to look for the things that she would need to fix Corduroy's shoulder strap. The first thing she found was a pair of scissors. Then she looked for a spool of green thread. Then she pulled out a pin cushion full of pins. The pin cushion looked like a little fat tomato. Now she set all those things down, and then she looked for one more thing that she was going to need. What do you think? Yes, a button. Another button that looked just like the button on Corduroy's other strap. Now she was ready to get to work. The first thing she did was she unspooled some thread and she cut it with the scissors. Then she took a needle from the pincushion and, licking the end of the thread, she threaded the needle through the eye, which is the hole at the top of the needle. She pulled the thread halfway through and then tied a knot in the end. Then she put the needle back in the pincushion. Then she picked up that button that matched the one on Corduroy's strap. She put it in place. And then she took the needle and thread and she began to sew that new button on Corduroy's shoulder strap. And as she worked, she talked to him. I love you. I love you just the way you are, but you'll be more comfortable with your shoulder strap fastened. There. And she tied a knot in the thread. She stuck the needle back in the pincushion and she clipped the thread on the new button, and Corduroy's strap was fixed. Now, Lisa gave Corduroy a big hug. And Corduroy said, "You must be a friend. I've always wanted a friend." "So have I," said Lisa. And that's the story of Corduroy and his lost button.